Next up, we have George Moss. George is a dairy farmer with 2 farms of about 170 cows each and a 40-hectare dry stock unit in the South Waikato. He's a Dairy NZ climate change ambassador, and I've known George for a while now, and I know he's very passionate about climate change, so I'm really looking forward to what he has to say. And just a reminder to the panel, if you can stick to time, that'd be great. I don't want to bring out any sticks today. There's been too much talk of sticks and carrots.
My friend Whale will tell you I've never stuck to time, but look, before you push the start button, there's just a couple of comments I'd like to make. I went through the reforms of the 80s, and I chaired a number of those meetings where farmers came together in the 80s. And there was anger, there was frustration, there was hurt, and there was fear. But there was never misinformation. And that is the challenge we have to get through today. So to the policymakers in here and to all you that we're trying to get the momentum of change happening, understand that I think misinformation is the biggest driver of the fear that we're actually dealing with. So now opening up, kia ora koutou. What I'm going to talk about today is just our personal journey on farm. To the farmers in the room, I am not saying how this should be done or how you should do it. What I'm just saying is this is how we've done it. I'm not even sure that we're successful in how we've done it, but we're pursuing down a process and a procedure, and we're learning as we go. And I'd also just like to give a couple of acknowledgements. Over the years in working in this space, I'd like to thank Dairy NZ for their support, and I'd also like to thank the staff of Fonterra for their support. And it's just come through in the last 48 hours that our farm is now going to be one of the pilot farms with Nestle as we tackle and go on this greenhouse gas journey. So what's the next slide?
The green button.
The green button. You'll see that I'm technologically inept. Okay, right. The farm that we're actually looking at today, we do have 2 small dairy farms. They run in comparison, they compare each other, and a 40-hectare dairy support block. But there's one farm that we monitor intensely because it best represents a number of the smaller farms that sit in the Waikato, Taranaki and Northland. And that's why we model it. That's why the industry has worked with that farm a number of years. But probably the key things here, we talk about greenhouse gas reductions, and there's no debate around, we actually need to do that. The quantum of greenhouse gases in the sector actually has to come down. But for us, the first point is we're absolutely committed to doing our part. We don't have a target of 10% or 20% or whatever. It is about a journey without an end. It is about how much can we achieve and what is that sweet spot before we start seriously impacting on the communities. In that place, we haven't ruled out land use change, but we've done the numbers, and we're numbers people. To do the land use change seriously, we can get a 50% reduction in greenhouse gases. That would make Rod down there very, very happy. But $400,000 off this little farm would not go through the local community, and I'd hope the press treats this with some sensitivity. There will be employment losses. The other part that I'm acutely aware of, and is a part of that, there is absolutely no point in us reducing our greenhouse gases if we continue producing milk with a greenhouse gas footprint going up. We have to get the double wins, because if we don't get the double wins, the Nestles of this world will look to Ireland or look to California and say, hey, George and Sharon, we can actually get lower footprint milk out of those countries now. We'll leave yours behind. So we have to go for that. Equally, the more things you go for, the harder it gets. And the other one is, I believe, as citizens in New Zealand, we all have a responsibility to try to keep products going across the border of some description. So I'm not hung up on whether it's milk, meat, or whatever, but unless we want to become a North Korea or a previous Cuba or Albania, we are going to be a trading nation for a foreseeable future. So I'll get into, where are we? Have I gone too far ahead on my slides? No, I haven't. Okay, like Nikki, Ag First, on behalf of Dairy NZ, came in and tore our business apart. And here's some comments that I've actually copied pretty directly from the report. And I'd say this with no arrogance. We're a highly efficient operation, can only slightly reduce greenhouse gases without impacting profit. The highlighted one is where the opportunity was. Reducing replacement rate can achieve small gains in greenhouse gas reductions, increase profits slightly, but the option relies heavily on reducing the in-calf rate, or repo production as we call it in the dairy, and I'll come back to that later. Reducing stocking rate and reducing supplements is the most effective way of reducing greenhouse gases, but requires the greatest amount of skills and increases financial and climate risk. And that has been one of the real challenges for us. We're trying to avoid purchased feeds, but as the climate actually physically changes, with the exception of this year getting more droughts, we're actually buying in more feeds, and last year we actually failed to achieve our targets. So of the options that were modelled by Ag First, there was nil imported feed, less N fertiliser, nil imported feed, rear less replacements, and plant sidlings into trees. And you can see there, the one in the black, the replacement rate was where there looked to be a win-win opportunity. For what it has worth, we have planted some of those sidlings and trees. They're not a part of our greenhouse gas inventory. They're just part of biodiversity and just trying to help things along. There was also some work done we were part of the initial step change project with Dairy NZ, and what they did there's about 60 farms and they plotted up on a graph. So your bottom axis, if you can see it, is your methane. So it's not CO2es, it's methane. On the left-hand side is low methane, on the right-hand side, high methane. On the vertical scale, you've got profit per hectare, operating profit. And obviously, A is where you've got highly profitable farms with a low methane. B is highly profitable farms with high methane output. D, you've got low profitable farms with a really big footprint. And C, you've got low profitable farms but a low footprint. So what that actually shows us is two things. One, we actually need to understand those farms a whole lot better and what actually sits below the line in operating profit. And the second part of that, it actually highlights that there's a real opportunity to actually shift the bell-shaped curve within the industry. A light bulb moment for us actually came a number of years ago, so this is why these figures on 2 cows are actually quite dated. These are 2 outlier cows. One was actually in my wife Sharon's herd, which is the top cow, and the other cow was actually a heifer that was sitting in the herd that's modelled on the farm. And what that showed to us, in those years, the herd averages was around about 420, 430 kilograms of milk solids a cow. And you can see the days in milk. So these cows are actually absolutely pumping. And these were the outliers. And that told us that if we could actually get the rest of the herd producing like that through genetics, we could actually drop the number of cows that we had to hold on farm. And it is the maintenance component of those cows eating to just stay alive would be the greenhouse gas proportion that we would actually save. So that was the light bulb moment. Interestingly, in that 15-16 year, we had 5 Jersey heifers do over 514 kilograms of milk solids in about 250 to 270 days. So if you can get it right, these cows can pump. Our strategy, and that sort of started to inform our thinking, and we're the sort of people that like to write things down, formalise things, and then put them into a plans. And one of the things when we started on this journey was to understand, and the noise has been made about charges coming on greenhouse gases, that we'd need to evolve and change, was time is your greatest ally. Play the long game. The longer you leave it, the bigger the change potentially has to be. You have to move into a revolutionary type model as opposed to an evolutionary type model. What that is, and it's been alluded to by one of the previous speakers, is to be at best practice or near best practice for all the things regarding nitrogen, fertiliser, the placement and animal welfare. So working on making every animal a winner, because you're paying a greenhouse gas footprint on that animal. So she needs to perform, or he needs to perform, or it needs to go. We decided through that we'd absolutely expedite genetic gain through vigorous culling and improving reproduction performance. And this has been a real challenge for us, and it's a real challenge for the industry, and we need, as a dairy industry, take ownership of Repo now, put a team around it, because if we can crack it, it'll give the industry the biggest gains both in profitability and greenhouse gas reduction. So I put a challenge out there to all those in, because it's a real opportunity. We've always modelled, used dairy-based since its inception. I've used Overseer since its inception and been part of those discussions, and we also use FarmAX. The other part of that, when we embarked on this journey, we didn't know what the charges were going to look like, but we knew something was coming down the line. So the best way, if you know there's a cost coming down the line, is to get your balance sheet in order, and we were pretty heavily geared, and to get your P&L in order. So we've consciously been chasing that year in, year out, and it drives our decision-making processes. Okay, probably the bit that you're interested in. Outcomes so far. Cow numbers, that bell. It's all right, we'll do it. Okay, cow numbers have gone from 180 to 167 and falling. We might plateau there. Our nitrogen has gone from 240 kilograms a hectare, which was the worst year or peak year, down to about 115, and we seem to be dropping that. Having said that, the time frame around the nitrogen is closer to 15 years, 18 years, so that's not a 5-year shift. Herd BW on this herd has gone from the top 50%, we're now sitting in the top 3%. Peak milk and total milk solids per cow is trending up. Days in milk is trending down. We all know as dairy farmers, a cow is most efficient closest to the time that she calves. Milk solids in total, so the amount going out the gate, is flattish, and it's been hard to assess when the seasons, as Nikki alluded to, you know, Mother Nature decides to deal to you either by being too wet or too dry. Greenhouse gas totals appear to be falling, and I underline appear because it's very early days yet, and acknowledge that. Greenhouse gas per kilogram of milk solids appears to be improving, but the seasons are becoming increasingly challenging, and we try to stay system 2, but we absolutely failed last season. The challenges and the frustrations, I'll come to the graph. All models oversee and that use a back calculation, so they have no way of calculating the efficiency of a cow to actually convert grass into milk. It's a standard ME calculation. Chasing genetic gain in the short term means a younger, less efficient herd, is that there's 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old cows that are actually the most efficient cows. Also chasing it means that we've been holding a lot more young stock on farm around that. Per cow, and this is the big challenge, per cow performance increases, our mating performance is increasingly struggling. And that is a big cost to the business. And the other one is getting staff to understand the needs of high-performing cows and the importance of greenhouse gases. Methane and nitrous oxide fundamentally are efficiency indexes. And trying to get that psyche into everyday decisions when people are managing cows has been a real challenge for us. What we've actually done around there, we've actually written a manual now that they can actually follow. Grass management, as your stocking rate comes down, becomes increasingly difficult and more complex. So how have we gone? And I accept that this is absolutely a short duration, and I accept that I'm not a scientist. But this is spat out by Overseer, happy to have it peer reviewed. I haven't got the 2017 data because we aggregated all our businesses that year, and I would need to separate it out. The green line is actually greenhouse gases per hectare, and the blue line is greenhouse gases per kilogram of milk solids. So, and going into the last slide before I get removed or hit. Fundamentally, and we've always had it within our businesses, we always stick everything on available for people because that's how you build trust. Right, what we've got in the green line is the operating profit for Tokoroa Pastoral over time. You'll see there is a pale orange line there. That is because we took a fixed milk price position in that year and we were seriously out of the money by about $1.50 a kilogram of milk solids. So the true profit as measured by dairy base is at the end of the little pale orange line. Had we not taken a fixed milk price position, and I've back calculated exactly, we would have been at the top of the green. The heavy orange line is the Waikato average of operating profit. So for better or for worse, you can look up the farm through the Dairy NZ website. It's public information, so you can look into that, and obviously happy to take things. So hopefully I'm in time.
Thanks, George. That was awesome.